actually tell our kids about school? Like, what's the official line? What do you say? I can say from my perspective, I've just told them it was great, and I kind of say enjoy it as much as you can, and they know you guys, so they know you exist, and they know I know you from school, which they find quite cool. And but apart from that, I don't really talk that much about school, to be honest, with the kids. So Aaron, what about you then? What's your official line to the kids?
Well, I just tell him like one of mine is doing his leaving cert. He's a couple of exams done, but I just say like do your best. It's not the be all to end all, and there's life after school. There's plenty of opportunities. So we're not the type of parents that would put them under massive pressure anyway. So that'll be my line, like at the moment, just do your best.
Rory, and I suppose interesting. Your mother being a teacher, you being teacher principal. How do you communicate this,
Yeah,
the good old
funnily
school
enough,
days?
I'd be very similar to Aaron, and honestly, everyone would expect because of my role that I'd almost be over the top about this stuff. But like as a parent, obviously, look, I really want them to try and to do their best and all the rest of it. But once they're doing their best, that's all you can ask for. I think you also have to remember they're only teenagers. We all made mistakes. They're not going to get it right all the time. And I think you got to be kind of understanding about that stuff as well. It's a process. They might have a couple of months where they're doing really well, and they may have a month or two where they're not studying as hard. And I think the important thing is to keep the relationship open all the time and just try and encourage them and be aware. Like there's a difference between encouraging and trying to control people, and try hopefully stay on the side of being encouraging and keep that relationship positive and hope that it all works out.
Yeah,
And for
good
you,
point.
Niall?
Good point.
Yeah. Again, it's interesting because you don't have these really conversations in the pub, but it's interesting to hear you guys. So yeah, I don't really talk to them that much about it, other than asking them how they're getting on. And I suppose if I'm encouraging them, generally speaking, the encouragement is around what I would describe as kind of extracurricular or kind of non-academic, or what I would consider kind of traditional academic type stuff. So yeah, I mean, I let them come to me and check in with them now and then. No, there isn't a huge amount of day-to-day conversation about it. Now, my kids are young, so maybe that'll change as they go to secondary school. I'm not sure.
And have you guys ever given your kids like advice, and knowing that you didn't do that yourself, or would you have taken that advice when you were their age?
Don't be worrying about what someone said to you, shirt is grand, it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Try not to rush your picking your career path. Be one of mine anyway.
Yeah, so something that did pop up there recently. Now that you thought about mention it there, I had to have a conversation with one of my kids about friends and friendship and how to, I suppose, quantify or qualify a friendship. And again, you've been through that process, yourself and some people and so on and so forth. So I suppose that's kind of interesting in the sense that you base that on your friends. And to the large extent, I was basing that conversation, not necessarily entirely as I was aware of it at the time, but on my friendships with you guys. So in other words, how did they become the good friendships that they were, and why were you guys those people, and why did it all work out, and why was it different from other people, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of full circle in that respect. But I suppose the other thing is Rory's pointed out there, and again, this is a difficult one for me. Ironically, this is probably more difficult for me than the academic stuff. It's to let them make their mistakes in terms of their friendships and their relationships, and while you guide them and give them some guidance, that you don't try to control it either. And that's tricky. I found that tricky, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's very tricky, and we have lived through some tough moments here with my kids, when it comes to friends and school friends, and it's gone down some paths that you kind of didn't want it to go down, but like you said, Niall, you can't control it. You have to just be there to support and try to put them in the right path. But thankfully, everything works out at least. I think we're almost done, Niall. I don't think there was anything else we wanted to discuss.
No, it's been an interesting look back at school and an interesting conversation, and obviously to have Rory's perspective
Yeah, big time.
as
Brilliant.
a teacher, as a principal, I think it's been great. And again, I'm lucky because obviously Ashin is a secondary school teacher here, so I get to see some of the differences or hear about the differences and so on. But ironically, again, just to reiterate, it's that relationship piece, which to be honest is the piece that probably remains the same. I think that's probably the most important piece, or the biggest lesson, so to speak, in the whole thing, you know.
Can I ask, like, how has St. Ailbe's changed, we'll say, maybe from when we were doing our Leaving Cert to today?
I suppose, look, the kids that are in school today are very different to what we were like when we were in school. And like there's a lot of things for the positive. Like they're probably way better at talking about their feelings. They're probably way better at expressing themselves. Like in terms of anti-bullying and like I suppose being like they're very aware of that stuff and they probably look out for each other. And for the most part, they're very, very kind to each other. You know, I suppose they're kind of aware of positive mental health and all of that sort of stuff. But look, the big elephant in the room and the big challenge, unsurprisingly, is social media. And there's two sides of it. And probably, unfortunately, at that vulnerable age that kids are at, and in the teenage years, there's a major downside to social media, and that's one of the big challenges. And like in so many ways, as I say, they're probably far more advanced than what we were. You know, kind of emotionally and all of that sort of thing. But then in other ways, they're far behind. Like I mean, like you'd be shocked with what percentage of kids probably don't ride a bike or potentially mightn't even be able to ride a bike. You know, whereas age group, everybody could do that. It's different, and that's the way I describe it. You can start saying what's better or what's worse. I think it's just different. They've come up in a slightly different environment, and there's some areas where they're definitely better, and maybe there's some areas where they need a little bit of support.
Interesting. Well, it's definitely good to hear that you're keeping on the school musical tradition, and Grease 2, as I was on 2 years ago.
Well, I think it's the original Grease, not Grease 2, but
Okay, Grease, the original Grease, brought into the new century. Okay, so I think we'll leave it at that. And Rory, usually I finish the podcast with a quote, and this. We're going to do it again this time, and it's from Oscar Wilde on education. Education is an admirable thing, but it is well to remember from time to time that nothing that is worth knowing can be taught. I'll let you ponder on that for a
Very deep.
weekend. And we'll be back with a brand new podcast on midlife regrets. And Mike Carr will be back in the usual seat, and we look forward to that. So thanks, Rory. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Niall.
Cheers,